There are words you've rehearsed 1,000 times in the hollow of your chest. Words that gather like storms behind your ribs, that press against your throat until you can taste their weight. And yet, when the moment comes, when someone asks, "Are you okay?" or "What's wrong?" you smile. You say, "Nothing. I'm fine." And in that moment, your silence becomes the most honest thing about you. Because sometimes what you cannot say is the only truth you have left. Sometimes your silence is not emptiness. It is everything you are too afraid to name. Soren Kierkegaard understood this. He understood that we are creatures who hide from ourselves, who speak in riddles even when we are alone, who perform a kind of theater for the world and then forget we are still wearing the mask when we look in the mirror. He called this despair. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that looks like normalcy. The kind that sounds like, "I'm fine." Kierkegaard believed that most people live in a state of despair without even knowing it. They despair over not being themselves. They despair by trying to be someone else. They despair by refusing to choose, by refusing to feel, by building a life that looks perfect from the outside while the inside rots in silence. Your silence is not neutral. It is a language. It speaks of all the things you have swallowed, all the screams you have softened into sighs, all the confessions you have rewritten into politeness. When you are silent, you are not saying nothing. You are saying, "I do not trust you with my truth." Or perhaps, "I do not trust myself with my truth." You are saying, "If I speak, I will shatter." And so you hold the shards inside and you call it strength. But Kierkegaard would ask you, what are you so afraid of breaking into? There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who do not see you. Not because they are cruel. Not because they do not care. But because you have become so skilled at hiding that even your presence feels like an absence. You sit at the table. You laugh at the right moments. You nod. You contribute just enough to avoid suspicion. And inside you are screaming. Inside, you are a cathedral of unsaid things, echoing with the hymns of a self you have never let anyone hear. This is what Kierkegaard called the sickness unto death. Not physical dying. Spiritual suffocation. The slow erasure of the self beneath layers of performance, politeness, and fear. You have learned to translate yourself into something bearable. You have learned to edit your pain into something that does not make others uncomfortable. When someone asks how you are, you do not tell them about the 3 a.m. unraveling, the questions that have no answers, the feeling that you are living a life that belongs to someone else. You do not tell them that you are tired of pretending, that you are exhausted by the weight of being understood only in fragments. Instead, you smile. You say, "Busy but good." And they believe you because it is easier than the truth. Because the truth would require them to sit with you in the dark, and most people do not know how to do that. Most people need you to be fine so they can be fine. And so you become fine. You become the lie you tell to keep the peace. But here is what Kierkegaard knew. The self cannot be built on lies. Not even kind ones. Not even necessary ones. Every time you silence yourself, you are making a choice. You are choosing the approval of others over the integrity of your own soul. You are choosing the comfort of being liked over the terror of being known. And the cost of that choice is you. The real you. The one who feels too much, who thinks too deeply, who cannot be summarized in small talk and shallow exchanges. That self does not disappear when you ignore it. It festers. It waits. It becomes the ache you cannot name, the restlessness you cannot cure, the feeling that you are living on the surface of your own life. There is a story Kierkegaard might tell, though he never wrote it quite this way. Imagine a man who spends his entire life building a house. He chooses the wood carefully. He measures every angle. He paints it in colors that others admire. And when it is finished, everyone tells him how beautiful it is. How perfect. But the man never steps inside. He lives in the yard, looking at the house, maintaining it, showing it to visitors. And when someone asks, "Why don't you live in it?" he says, "Oh, I will. Someday." But someday never comes. Because the house was never built for living. It was built for looking. And he has forgotten that a life is not a monument. It is a dwelling. It is meant to be inhabited. Your silence is that house. It is beautiful. It is safe. It keeps others at a distance where they cannot hurt you, cannot misunderstand you, cannot demand more than you are willing to give. But you cannot live in it. You can only orbit it, polishing the windows, checking the locks, making sure no one gets too close. And the part of you that wants to be known, the part that wants to speak, that wants to risk being seen, it grows smaller and smaller until it becomes a whisper you can barely hear yourself. Kierkegaard wrote about the leap of faith. Not a religious leap, though he spoke of God, but a leap into selfhood, a leap into honesty, a leap into the terrifying freedom of saying, "This is who I am. This is what I feel. I cannot pretend anymore." That leap is not triumphant. It is not Instagram-worthy. It is quiet. It is brutal. It is the moment when you stop performing and start existing. And it feels like dying because in a way it is. The self you have been pretending to be must die so the self you actually are can breathe. But you are afraid. Of course you are. Because what if you speak and no one understands? What if you open the door and no one walks through? What if your truth is too much, too heavy, too strange? What if the silence was not protection but prison, and breaking it does not free you but only reveals how alone you have always been? These are not irrational fears. They are the cost of being human, of caring, of wanting to matter. Kierkegaard did not promise that honesty would be rewarded. He only promised that dishonesty would destroy you. There is a difference between being silent because you choose peace and being silent because you are afraid of war. One is wisdom. The other is surrender. And you have been surrendering for so long that you have forgotten what your own voice sounds like. You have become an expert at reading the room, at adjusting your face, at knowing exactly what to say to make the moment pass smoothly. But you have lost the ability to say what you mean. You have lost the courage to be inconvenient, to be difficult, to be anything other than easy to digest. And the cost of that is a life that feels like a long, polite conversation with strangers. Kierkegaard believed that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. Not in a self-help, self-care, bubble bath kind of way, but in a deeper, more painful sense. He believed that you cannot love others truly if you are lying to yourself. You cannot connect authentically if you are performing. You cannot be free if you are hiding. And most of us are hiding. Not because we are cowards, but because we have been taught that our truth is too much, that our pain is a burden, that our silence is a kindness. And so we swallow ourselves piece by piece and call it maturity. But maturity is not the ability to disappear. It is the ability to stay present even when it hurts. It is the ability to say, "I am struggling," without needing to fix it immediately. It is the ability to let someone see you unfinished, uncertain, unraveling. That is not weakness. That is the most terrifying form of strength. Because it means you have stopped trying to control how others perceive you. You have stopped editing yourself into something palatable. You have chosen to exist as you are, knowing you might be rejected, knowing you might be misunderstood, and doing it anyway. Your silence has been a kind of mercy. Not for you. For everyone else. You have made yourself small so others could feel big. You have swallowed your needs so others would not have to adjust. You have carried your pain alone so no one would have to help you hold it. And you have told yourself this is love. This is sacrifice. This is what good people do. But Kierkegaard would ask, what kind of love requires you to not exist? What kind of relationship can only survive if you stay silent? What are you protecting by disappearing? The truth is, some people need your silence. They need you to stay easy, predictable, undemanding. They need you to not ask too much, not feel too deeply, not need anything they cannot give without effort. And if you speak, if you break the silence, you will lose them. Not because you are wrong, but because they cannot meet you where you are. And that is the loneliest realization. That the people you have been protecting with your silence are the same people who cannot handle your voice. But there are others, not many perhaps, but some. People who are tired of performances. People who want to know you, not the version of you that fits neatly into their expectations. People who will sit with you in the dark and not try to turn on the light. People who will hear your truth and not flinch. You will never find them if you keep pretending. You will never build a life that feels real if you keep speaking in code. Kierkegaard said that purity of heart is to will one thing, and that one thing is not happiness, not success, not even love. It is authenticity. It is the alignment of what you feel, what you say, and what you do. It is the terrifying simplicity of being the same person in every room. You have spent so long translating yourself that you have forgotten the original language. You have spent so long curating your words that you have forgotten what it feels like to just speak. And the silence that remains is not peace. It is exhaustion. It is the weight of everything you have never said pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. You tell yourself it does not matter, that words are overrated, that people do not really want to know. But the truth is you are afraid. Afraid that if you speak, you will confirm what you have always suspected, that you are too much, or worse, that you are not enough. Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo you feel when you realize you can choose. You can speak. You can stop pretending. You can walk away from the life you have built out of other people's expectations and build something true. But with that freedom comes responsibility. The responsibility to face what happens next, to live with the consequences, to accept that authenticity does not guarantee happiness. It only guarantees that you will finally be living your own life instead of someone else's. And here is where it gets difficult. Because speaking your truth is not a single act. It is not one brave conversation that fixes everything. It is a daily practice. A daily choice to show up as yourself even when it is inconvenient. Even when it disappoints people. Even when it means you will be misunderstood or judged or left behind. It means accepting that some relationships were only possible because you were silent. And when you speak, they will end. Not dramatically, not with anger, but with a quiet distance that grows until you realize you were never truly known by them at all. This is the cost Kierkegaard spoke of, the cost of becoming a self. You lose the comfort of being everyone's version of you. You lose the safety of never being challenged. You lose the illusion that you can be loved without being seen. And in exchange you get something terrifying, the possibility of being truly known. Not by everyone, maybe not even by many, but by someone, by yourself at the very least, and that has to be enough, because living a life built on silence is not living at all. It is haunting your own existence. There is a moment that comes to all of us if we are honest. A moment when we realize that we have been performing for so long that we do not know who we are anymore. We look in the mirror and see a stranger, a competent stranger, a likable stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. And we realize that we have spent our entire lives becoming someone we thought we were supposed to be, instead of discovering who we actually are. Kierkegaard called this the greatest danger, to lose oneself, not to die, but to never have lived as yourself. Your silence is a kind of death, a slow, quiet erasure. Every time you swallow your words, you are choosing non-existence over risk. You are choosing the approval of others over your own integrity. And the tragedy is that most people do not even know you are doing it. They think you are fine. They think you are happy. They think the person they see is the person you are. And you let them believe it because correcting them would require you to admit how long you have been lying, how deeply you have buried yourself, how tired you are of pretending. But pretending is not sustainable. It has a breaking point, and that breaking point comes not with a dramatic collapse, but with a quiet numbness, a feeling that nothing matters because you are not really living anyway. You are going through the motions. You are saying the right things. You are doing what is expected. But inside you are hollow. Inside, you are a shell of someone who used to feel things deeply, who used to have opinions, who used to know what they wanted. And now you do not know anything except how to disappear. Kierkegaard would tell you that this is despair in its most insidious form. Not the despair of wanting to die, but the despair of being unwilling to live, of being so afraid of rejection, of conflict, of being too much or not enough, that you choose to be nothing at all. You choose silence not because it is peaceful, but because it is safe. And safety, when it comes at the cost of your own existence, is just another word for prison. So what does your silence say that your words never could? It says that you have been afraid for so long that fear has become your default state. It says that you have made yourself so small, so agreeable, so easy to overlook, that even you have started to forget you exist. It says that you have been waiting for permission to be yourself, permission that will never come because no one else can give it to you. It says that you know deep down that something is wrong, that this is not how life is supposed to feel, that there is a self inside you that is suffocating under the weight of all the things you have never said. And maybe that is enough. Maybe recognizing that your silence is not protection but prison is the first step toward breaking free. Maybe admitting that you are tired, that you are lonely, that you are afraid, is the beginning of honesty. Not honesty with others, honesty with yourself. Because you cannot speak your truth to the world if you have not first spoken it to yourself. You cannot ask to be known if you do not know who you are. Kierkegaard said that the self is a relation that relates itself to itself. That to be a self is to be aware of being a self. And most of us are not. Most of us are so busy being what others need, what others expect, what others can tolerate that we never stop to ask, what do I need? What do I feel? What do I want? Not what I should want. Not what would make sense. But what I actually, truly, desperately want, even if it is inconvenient, even if it is difficult, even if it means disappointing people. This is the question your silence has been avoiding. Because to answer it would require you to admit that you have been living a life that does not belong to you. That you have been making choices based on fear, not desire. That you have been so afraid of being rejected that you rejected yourself first. And that is the deepest betrayal. Not the betrayal of others. The betrayal of the self. The slow, quiet abandonment of who you are in favor of who you think you need to be. But you cannot keep doing this. You cannot keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of other people's comfort. You cannot keep swallowing your truth because it might make someone uncomfortable. You cannot keep pretending that your silence is kindness when it is really just fear. Because the cost is too high. The cost is you. The cost is a life spent in the margins, a life spent watching from the sidelines, a life spent wondering what it would have been like to actually live instead of just survive. So what does your voice need to say? Maybe you do not know yet. Maybe you have been silent for so long that you have forgotten how to speak. Maybe the words are still tangled in your chest, still half-formed, still too frightening to name. And that is okay. You do not need to have it all figured out. You do not need to have the perfect words. You just need to start. You just need to take one small step toward honesty. One small admission. One small moment of saying what you actually feel instead of what you think you should feel. It will be messy. It will be imperfect. It will probably come out wrong the first few times. You will stumble over your words. You will doubt yourself. You will wonder if it was a mistake. But it will be yours. It will be real. And that is worth more than all the polished performances, all the careful silences, all the years of pretending. Because at least it will be true. At least it will be you. Kierkegaard believed that truth is subjectivity. That the most important truth is not an objective fact but a lived reality. That to know something is not enough. You must become it. You must live it. You must choose it again and again, even when it is hard, even when it costs you, even when it would be easier to go back to pretending. And choosing to speak, choosing to be seen, choosing to exist as yourself. That is the hardest choice you will ever make. Because it is a choice you have to make every single day. Your silence has protected you. It has kept you safe from rejection, from conflict, from the pain of being misunderstood. But it has also kept you safe from connection, from intimacy, from the possibility of being truly known. And maybe it is time to ask yourself, what am I more afraid of? Being rejected for who I am? Or living my entire life as someone I am not? Because that is the choice. Not between speaking and silence, but between existence and erasure. Between living a life that is yours and living a life that belongs to everyone else. between the terror of being known and the slow death of never being seen. And only you can make that choice. No one can make it for you. No one can give you permission. No one can promise it will be okay. But you can choose. You can take the leap. You can speak. And maybe no one will understand. Maybe your words will fall into the void. Maybe the people you thought would hear you will turn away. But at least you will have tried. At least you will have honored the self that has been waiting all this time to be heard. At least you will have stopped betraying yourself for the comfort of others. And that, Kierkegaard would say, is enough. That is the beginning of becoming who you are. Your silence has said what your words never could. It has said that you are afraid. It has said that you are tired. It has said that you have been holding on for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to let go. But now it is time for your voice to say something too. Not something perfect. Not something that will fix everything. Just something true. Something that is yours. Something that says, I am here. I exist. I matter. Even if no one else hears it. Even if it changes nothing. At least I will have said it. At least I will have tried. That is all Kierkegaard asks. Not that you succeed. Not that you have all the answers. Just that you try. Just that you choose. Just that you take the leap into the terrifying unknown of being yourself. Because that is the only way to live. That is the only way to be free. Not free from pain. Not free from fear. But free from the prison of your own silence. Free to exist. Free to speak. Free to be. And if you made it this far, you know what this is. You know why you are here. You are tired of pretending. You are tired of content that tells you everything will be fine if you just think positive. You want the truth even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. So subscribe. Not as a passive act, but as a choice. A choice to keep confronting yourself. To keep returning to the questions that have no easy answers. To keep seeking what is real even when real is uncomfortable. Kierkegaard would say, to be a self is to choose to be a self. So choose. Click subscribe. And commit to the most difficult relationship you will ever have. The one with yourself. And if this resonated with something inside you, something you've been too afraid to name, do not just watch and leave. Subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because you need the reminder. Because every time you return here, you are choosing to sit with the hard truths instead of running from them. That is what Kierkegaard would call the leap. Subscribe as an act of honesty. As a commitment to yourself. To stop